All right, this is episode 30 of the Creator Indie Exchange. And we are joined today with Nathaniel JK of JKPapers, which is one of those long overdue interviews because it seems like a lot of people we've interviewed in the past at the end of the interview or off the interview is like, oh, you got to get Nathaniel on. You got to get Nathaniel on. So it has come to today. So we're excited. Nathaniel, how are you doing this fine Sunday morning?
Doing great. Yeah, I've been shaking in my boots about this interview for a couple weeks. I've never done an interview before. I've just like head
Wow.
down in the game, making comics and
Right,
just
right.
promoting on Instagram. So I'm really thrilled to have somebody ask me some questions about myself.
Right.
You're gonna
Well,
get. You're gonna,
that's what we're gonna do. So yeah,
Sweet.
let's go back to the beginning. We
yep.
always start. We try to start these off at like 12 years old or 9 years old, but
Hmm.
you're growing up. You're seeing things. So what really lit a fire under you is kind of the first thing. And so what were your first big things, and then who did your influences go on to become?
Okay, yeah. Well, I got into comics probably at the youngest age possible. I got the little mini comics with the He-Man figures before I could even read. Just thought that stuff looked really cool. Um, liked newspaper strip comics growing up, Garfield and all that kind of junk, Kathy and whatever. Found
Nice.
some Mad magazines that my mom had. That kind of blew my mind a little bit. Probably didn't even really know about actual comic books until about the first grade when I read the Origins of the Marvel Universe in the library, and I was like, "This is awesome!" Like all these different characters, Hulk, Spider-Man, Iron Man, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Really dug it, but then it was probably another chunky years before I even saw comic books in a store, and that blew my mind. And then get into like the early '90s and stuff. I'm adolescent. Comics are everywhere. I think the coolest thing that happened was I got one of those catalogs, kind of like Diamond distribution catalogs. The one that I got was called Advanced Comics, and that was
Right.
just like
Uh,
every single comic that was coming out that month, and I had no idea that something like that existed. So maybe even up to like a decade or two before actually seeing some of these comics, like Cerebus, Love and Rockets, Flaming Carrot, The Tick, Milk and Cheese. I knew about all that stuff when I was
yeah.
probably like 10 or something, and just kind of took what I could get as a poor kid, a little piecemeal collection. I had never had any like subsequent issues, just random titles. Marvel Comics Presents was a big one for me because it was cheap and you got two comics in it. I got the Spider-Man Torment graphic novel, the like what first 5 issues of the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man. I got
Right.
that for Christmas when I think I was 9. That one probably really blew my mind. And from there, it was just loving comics, really obvious stuff, Image Comics, Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, that kind of stuff. But then uh, read the Max, and I think that one really kind of like changed everything that was going on in my mind as someone who liked to
Sam Keith?
draw, someone who liked
Sam
comics.
Keith.
Sam
Yeah.
Keith, man, that just
Woo!
really warped my
What a
brain.
what a what a blender! What a blender of styles. He really slipped right in there when it came to like image.
Yeah,
He had that Frazetta, Beasley, but then just splatter. I mean, he really. Yeah, I come back to him a lot, and the
yeah,
story was very heartfelt too, as much as it might
definitely.
have appeared to be violent. Yeah, when I was teaching in the early '90s, that was a hot comic for the kids, and I remember a mother coming up to me going, "Should my child really be reading something this violent?" I said, "Have you read the comic?" And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
"No." Well,
Oh yeah,
it's about somebody who really cares about somebody and protects them and wants to protect them and will do anything. And she was just like, Wow, really? I was like, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like a romance comic. It's a crime comic.
Hmm.
It's a superhero comic. It's a horror comic. Like it's beautiful. I got so much more out of like random issues of the Max than I ever did from like
Yeah.
Youngblood or Spider-Man or any of that stuff. As much as I
Right.
thought that was cool, like I could read the Max and feel like this is making me a better person. And the art was just mind blowing. This mix between extremely detailed painterly stuff, really soft washes of color and stuff, and then like kid drawings, like little kids scratchy bad
Yeah.
drawings, and the way that it all
Well,
fit
yeah,
together. Yeah, it just
it's often
was really
exaggerated.
inspiring.
So like you
Hmm.
see a little Sienkiewicz in there, but also like I see kind of like the graffiti b boys style in there too.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it like sometimes it's cartoony in that way, you know.
right, totally.
So yeah, so that's an interesting artist to latch onto because he was definitely free to be who he wanted to be in Image, and then eventually he does plenty of Marvel and DC. He does Wolverine and Nightcrawler and all the big names. I
Hmm.
guess DC he probably bopped around as an in-demand pro, right? He was in the
Yeah.
Sandman, so Zero Girl, a couple
Hmm.
others I see here. So those are some interesting influences. Not that your stuff looks exactly like any of those,
Sure, for sure.
right? We're all kind of like an amalgam. But now tell us about your discography. So what you're inspired, and I guess you're drawing and drawing and drawing. So what's the first thing that you put out?
Well, funny thing, as much as I loved comics all my life, I decided, despite how much I loved drawing as a kid, that I didn't want to draw comics growing up. It was something about like being too ADD to draw the same thing over and over again, drawing characters over and over again, just wanting to
Right.
be able to draw my own thing that wasn't things I didn't know how to draw. Like I didn't want to draw people, stuff like that. So it just seemed like drawing comics is extremely hard, and I like comics. Didn't really think about it until like my early 20s, and I had some cool ideas, and then it just didn't really happen. Young adulthood's just stressful. You're, finding your own place in the world, and stuff like
We
art,
we uh
harder to
we
make time
abbreviate it
for.
by saying we just say life happens. We usually
Right.
abbreviate that part. Yeah.
For sure. Okay. Well, like let's zoom forward to when I actually decided to make some comics. Probably not surprisingly, I'm going to drop Cartoonist Kayfabe. That was a big influence on me. I was already kind of going down my semi nostalgic early '90s rabbit hole. Uh, Watching their wizard coverage was pretty enlightening, kind of revisiting that and getting me excited. But it was their mailbag episodes where they would show off stuff that people had made, and I was like, people are out here like making things that aren't even real comics. And I was like, well, I can do that. I want to do that. I love producing things. Prior to making comics, I ran kind of an independent cassette based record label where I would put out noise cassettes and stuff. But then the noise scene just kind of like
Oh, wow.
crumbled,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't have that outlet anymore. So it just happened at the right time. It's like I can make comics, and I was like, well, I got to draw these comics. So I dug up some old ideas. Shadow, the Demon of Dark Matter, was a character that I created when I was 9 years old, and kind of just made a little fold-up mini comic for that. And then from there, had some other ideas for. I think it was going to be called Maximum Murder Magazine, and the horror host for that was going to be Max Murder. But then still, what do I draw? When do I have the time to draw this? What are my real ideas? And then I read Making Comics by Linda Berry, and I realized I don't have to be trying so hard, racking my brain so hard. I can just put these ideas on paper, have an idea, have a dumb idea, and then go all the way with it. And that's kind of where the world of 19XDX came from. XDX is just kind of vague late 20th century. Decided to do that setting because I didn't want to have to draw cell phones or overt internet reference and stuff
Right.
like
Got
that.
that.
Just kind of
A simpler
spoke to
time.
my taste as an 80s kid or a 90s kid. So XDX is about 88 to 93. I did my first Max Murder chapter as a mini comic. And then decided I want this to be bigger. Let's get some friends in here. So I was on Instagram and was connecting with a lot of other artists, and we all liked this idea of the world of 19XDX. So I let everybody just create their own characters. They're like, it just has to exist in this world. Let's make it funny and violent, and it's going to be called Soaked in Blood, and turned into an anthology. And from there, it's just like steamrolled. Just finding as many cool artists out there that I can. If they're into it, they can contribute their art to the comic, and I'm happy to have them. Happy to curate a collection and a community of like-minded up and coming artists.
Yeah, I see this here. You got so many different styles, and how many issues have you put out of? So this is your flagship now. It's Soaked in Blood.
Yeah, Soaked in Blood's the main anthology series. I think I probably have something like 30 or 40 different artists who've worked on it in total. Issue 4 just came out last weekend, premiered that at Lone Star Zine Fest in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And that's got a cool new fancy color cover. I can hold it up. You guys don't have this one yet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it
Oh
just
yeah, I
came
saw that
out.
on Instagram.
Yeah. Cover by Joseph Leonardo with colors by Jake Quirk. Awesome team. I'll definitely be having them back to do more stuff, and let my friend Andrew do the main 18-pager Max Murder kind of prequel story. And
Right.
it's just got a ton of other artists. Got Alan Robinson, Jamie Barrows, Matt Chi, all the classic dudes, Alex Daikaiju, and some new people. I got Grimothy Ripper. He's a new guy, real punk style. Definitely dig it. Scratchy, free.
Yeah.
And then Isaac Popovich. He does kind of a more like old timey cartoon style, but he's doing it in 19XDX with some violent, cool, brutal characters too. So yeah, 4 issues in on Soaked in Blood, plus the Max Murder Killing Spree issue, which takes place between Soaked in Blood 1 and 2. Yeah, we're gonna keep rolling with it. Got a lot planned for next year as well. Got more Tory comics, more Max Murder comics. So I'm gonna do some solo comics and introduce some of the characters that I've only vaguely hinted at so far.
So the biggest question is, you're a distributor, correct? Would you consider yourself a zine distributor? Because some people have referred you as that, but we want to let you set the record straight.
Sure, I think that's a good way to describe it. If I wanted to be more big-headed about it, I would say more like the president and CEO of JKPapers Publishing.
Okay.
You're publisher.
I
Publisher
contribute.
distributor.
I contribute artwork and comics to everything that I produce, whether it's a solo comic for someone else. I'll do like the back cover. So I'm in the bullpen with these guys making the comics. But yeah, I'm the publisher. I edit everything. I put it all together on Procreate, print it, staple it, fold it. I just do all the things it takes to make a comic book physically.
So the distribution part of it, though, the key is that you're running a mailing list. Is that also true? Like basically you kind of like hey, this is out, send an email out to people, get a copy, or is there stores involved? What is the extent of your distribution?
Okay, yeah. Well, they've got a big cartel site, the jkpapers.bigcartel.com, and so I sell it online that way. I promote it primarily through Instagram and Facebook, and I go to local conventions and have it there. There's a local shop in town, Austin Books and Comics, best comic shop in town, and they carry the books as well. And then past that, all the contributors are from all over the country, some in other countries as well. and I give them copies. They can order more copies at cost and sell them at their shops or conventions. So it's kind of a lot of word of mouth, a lot of kind of punk underground sort of distribution methods. Sometimes I'll send people comics they didn't order just because I know that they have ordered in the past, and are like, well, maybe the Instagram algorithm's all screwed up and you don't know I'm still doing this, so just hook them up. Yeah, just trying to move them. Each issue's got a print run of somewhere around. I think the first issue I've probably put about 300 copies out there into the world.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think it's getting out there, but I'm sure that it's a total mystery to a lot of people have never even heard about me. Is ordering the same kind of comics from other people. It's a massive world of underground artists
Yeah.
out there.
Right. So, give us the elevator version of your main character, Max Murder, because you're asking everybody to create something. Well, at least in these Soaked in Bloods,
Mhm.
some kind of story centered around Max Murder. So,
Sure.
what are the ins and outs of Max Murder?
Okay, yeah, Max Murder is kind of an anomaly. No one knows who Max is. It's so far everything takes place in the span of about a week. Max Murder has gone on a killing spree. It's a serial killer. All we know about Max Murder is that he's a psychopath. He wants to kill everybody. There's no motive. You don't have to be. He's not killing good guys. Not killing bad guys. He is a bad guy, but he just wants to be the only one left because humanity is awful and annoying, and that's pretty much it. Just a total antisocial lunatic out there killing as many people as possible. Sounds pretty dark, but it's all in good fun. It's a dark humor kind of comic. Uh, I know who Max Murder is, and then the other contributors who have drawn Max Murder think they know. But I like that kind of unreliable narrator kind of aspect. The kind of like you've seen the sketches of the perpetrator, and it's like he looks like this, and then they find the guy, and it doesn't really look like him.
Right.
It's that kind of thing. It's like eyewitness accounts. Yeah, just kind of interpretations, and from there, it's kind of developed into are there more Max Murders? Is it more than one person? Is it who we
Like
think
a
it
cult.
is? Yeah, could be a cult, could be some kind of demonic possession. But I think we all agree that there's always been a Max Murder all throughout history. There's somebody out there who just wants to just see the world burn. And
Right.
yeah, that's Max.
So
That's
yeah,
Max.
so you're offering all these different artists a chance within just a couple of pages to just kind of go crazy. And here's a character you can let it all loose. Some of the stuff is gory, some of the stuff is a little edgy, some of the stuff is straight out of like a underground, like Spain Rodriguez, panels. A lot of real cool inspired stuff here. um and that's a statement. It's like, we're just gonna let go here. We're calling it Soaked in Blood. We got the bright red paper, and not a lot of rules other than that it's just going nuts. I see, some of the lettering is great too. Reminds you of band logos. A lot
Yeah,
of
thanks.
this kind of splatter here. We're seeing a couple of people that we have interviewed. Alex Turbin, obviously, and the Tory creator I saw in here as well, right?
Alan.
Yeah,
Alan
Alan
Robinson.
Robinson's awesome. We're all awesome.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alan's one of
Right.
I
the
agree.
newer guys into the camp, and he's super enthusiastic about it. He did the first Tory story in Soaked in Blood 3. And
Yep.
I love the character. He loved the character. He's like, I want to do a one shot. So we did a short one shot. And now Tori's in every issue of Soaked in Blood going forward until Alan wants to stop.
And it's also interesting for people that are creators here, if you're in the game, because we talk to everybody from reviewers to retailers to publishers who don't do their own art necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
publishers who sometimes do, and they become, curators slash, collaborators. And so it's a real showcase because, like, I'm finding so many styles that I like. How about you, Kurt?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you right now, Joseph Leonardo, he is channeling from another planet. I
Yeah,
mean, it's. I've been having a little bit of conversation with him. Been interested in getting a commission. Would love to work with him, but I just see him being just really in the flow of things. But he, the thing about it, and this is just my own artsy nerdy thing. He seems to be tapping into especially like the Rob Liefeld image comic energy, but
definitely.
completely owning it. Like
Right.
it's not even homage level. It's like using certain mark making in order to indicate like maybe like a little stylisticness that
Mm-hmm.
then generationally people would go, oh, that kind of looks like Spawn. No, that's not. Wait a
Definitely.
second, and he makes you fall into it. And that music comic he just released, I keep asking for a copy. So I'm hoping that comes, there's access to that. But I also, Jake, are you responsible for this, Nathaniel? This one here?
Oh yeah, yeah. That one's all my art. That one's called
Oh,
24 black and white paintings for black and white reproduction. It was a zine that I made that showcased all 24 paintings that I made over about a year's time.
wow. Wow.
I do that kind of art when I don't have the energy or the focus to make comics.
Right.
But I do want to be creative, and I just like that kind of art, and so I did
How
that.
big are these pieces?
Barely
Originals? The
bigger than
original?
the zine itself. They were just like the
Oh,
kind of like little boards that you get
yeah.
at the dollar store. But
Yeah.
yeah, I sell the original paintings at conventions and stuff, and then for a much cheaper price, you can just get the zine with everything in it.
Yeah. Well,
So
the thing about it, I want to connect it back to your originally being a noise record label.
Yeah.
So when did you get into noise?
That was probably in high school. Probably from listening to
Is
bands
that
like Sonic Youth and Flipper, like
uh
noisy
huh?
punk, but not exactly like noise music. And then I got into
Right.
more electronic music, stuff like Square Pusher and
Oh yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
Aphex
Oh
Twin.
yeah.
And then
Oh yeah.
I heard an Aphex Twin single that had different remixes, and Merzbow did uh, a remix, and it was just like listening to a jet engine screeching
Yeah.
at your head.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
thought for certain nobody else is doing this. This guy is nuts. And then as I found out that I was wrong and that there were more artists doing
Right.
this, and
Right.
figured out how they were doing it, I got into doing that too. I have been in bands before. I was in punk bands in high school and stuff, and have been dicking around on guitar for the better part of my life, but never really actually very good at it. So I think it really spoke to me as like a way to express myself with sound art that wasn't skilled music.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just got a bunch of guitar pedals, some microphones, put the microphone in a box full of broken glass and shake it with a bunch of distortion over it, and it just
Awesome.
sounds
Awesome.
awful, just terrible stuff.
Right. Right.
But in a live setting, it's very zen. It's very
Yeah.
exciting. It's very punk without it being actual punk, you know.
Have you come across a band by the name of Cahotek?
That sounds familiar, but I don't think I've actually heard them. No,
Okay.
how
Okay.
about
Um.
Jackie O motherfucker?
no, no.
Okay,
I'm honestly,
I'm a
I'm not all
fan of
that hip.
this singer Wise Blood, and it's spelled
Yeah,
Weyes Blood.
yeah, yeah. I've heard
But
that.
she was in some noise bands ahead before that, and it's so weird because she's so like melodic and like symphonic and everything now.
Hmm.
But I guess once you get that out of your blood, right?
Well, the reason I bring it up is because we always have this extreme identity towards making comics, just like with like Joseph Leonardo tapping into image comics and then using the iconography in order to, get people to recognize it and move through it and stuff. But, to be an individual creatively, I'm wholeheartedly I endorse the behavior of, you know, just expressing yourself, even finding the tools, finding other people. Nowadays, there should be no excuse for anybody entering a creative place. There's just no excuse. You just use YouTube, you start asking it questions, and you'll find people showing you how to do things, and going from there. But for you to put this in the package, books that you sent, is just, it makes me feel like, there's so much hope in creativity. I mean, I know it might sound a little like, but to have somebody be expressing themselves and it being a part of their whole set, I just find it to be, very inspiring. So,
Thank you.
thank
Yeah.
you for that. Thank you for this, and especially the other pieces. Like then when you get something like knits, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
it's very hard for people that are not actively pursuing their own sense of creativity to get this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like you don't draw the way you write. You don't, sleep the way you eat. We're all humans doing so many different things. It's like, yeah, comics is definitely a skill. Drawing precise images and using the tools to make comics the way that people think that comics are supposed to be made.
Right.
That's all something that has to be learned, and it has a lot less to do with self-expression, I think. Not to say that you can't express yourself through making comics. Absolutely. Why would I be making comics otherwise?
Right.
But I think to have like the freedom to just show somebody what's in your mind, something that you put on canvas that took 1 minute to do, with Sumi ink and a toothbrush and just
Wow.
gestural images. That for me, sharing that feels very good and very gratifying. And thank you so much for the kind words
Yeah,
regarding that.
I was gonna say, are these like the Zen kind of things, where you stare at the blank canvas for 20 minutes, and then you dip the pen or the ink or the paint, the brush or whatever, and then you just go right?
Yep. It can be like that. Sometimes it's just kind of more, uh, it's like what directions my hand wants to move in. I'll have a vague idea of how much black I want on the canvas, and kind of a lot of it feels like writing, but in a language that doesn't exist. Uh, but yeah, it's kind of just, I got to make something. I got to do it right now. Pull out my supplies and just do the thing, and then you stare at it for like way longer than it took you to actually make it, and you're like, I like that. And then
Yeah,
if you
I
don't,
definitely,
then kind of add a little bit more.
I could definitely relate because in my classroom, when the kids all go home for the day, a lot of times there's leftover paint, and it's not like enough where you could pour it back in and save it for the next day. You got to use it up because it's just like, a little pool of red, a little puddle of blue, a little bit of black. So I was always like trying to find this really fast style where I just get like this empty poster board, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use up all this paint so it doesn't go to waste, and I'm just gonna do something real fast on my way out the door. And I ended up making these crazy like colorful faces out of that, like using random colors. But I know like sometimes you have a need to just make marks on something, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I used to be a graffiti kid, right? Maybe that's part of it too. But you know also interesting that we have yet another person from the music world. um Kurt, you
You
notice?
seem to be so surprised. You seem to be so
Well,
surprised.
because eventually at some point we got to do some kind of
I agree.
music accompaniment
I'm
thing where
thinking.
everybody
I'm
contributes
thinking.
like a demo or a tune or something that they made.
Yeah,
I
it'd be
think
a
Very
badass
good.
mixtape. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a badass mixtape.
right, you could do the cassette thing, you could do the digital thing, or I think probably the best place is but this is just a promo, is like take 10 seconds of every song clip and then put that with like 2 or 3 slides of the
Yeah.
art, make that a
Yeah.
1-minute presentation, and then link that to this digital download or whatever, NFT or pay-per-view or whatever, that you can buy, by contributing like, $2 or whatever, to the fund. And then you get to hear all the demos, and you can see, maybe like 10 to 15 pieces of art in a slideshow, as the songs play. I mean, we all have, tapes and stuff, knickknacks and like little scraps that we have, like, sitting back, from our music days. And maybe some of us are current, but there's such an intersection. And when you put the art to the music of the creator, then you start to see all these different kind of connections, right? Because sometimes it's like the complete opposite of the music, or sometimes it's so connected to the music. And Kurt and I started this conversation a long time ago about Michael Moorcock, who was who had a band, and he had this like psych space rock band, in the 70s, with like crazy lyrics and stories and everything. And then he turns out to be, this fancy schmancy comic, creator. And I'm sure there's so many others that are in the comic world that we don't know, play music on the side or compose or whatever. But it's just like so many of our interviews, go that same way. Somebody's a drummer, somebody's a guitarist, and wouldn't you wouldn't you just love to hear this, like a little bit of, some of these, snips of music to get to know the person even better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that is a cool idea. And the Toilet Comics crew did something kind of similar to that. Their latest release was called Tunes for the Toilet, and everybody contributed some music-related comic to it. And most of them have a QR code that links to a song, be it just one that they like, or in some cases, music or
Right.
soundscapes that they've made. So yeah, I think there's definitely precedent for that. But yeah, I like that idea a lot.
Right. If there's a contributor, they don't have a band, then they maybe have a favorite song or something. But it
Hmm.
seems like you would have to clear that if you were going to make it in any kind of download or any
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, definitely not legal.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
you could be like, who's friend, your favorite song from your friend's band, or something that you
right.
can get permission for, because obviously if you're making the music, you can get permission. But
Oh,
yeah,
for
that
sure.
that that's something that we just keep seeing again and again. And we could talk bands just as much as we can talk comics, I'm sure. You know.
Yeah.
So I think I've opened up everything except these 2 full size ones.
Oh,
Um,
cool, cool.
Kurt, how are we doing on the schedule? So we usually have the second segment is how do you feel? We've spoken about your distribution and how you're
Yeah.
very DIY and you're very kind of like community oriented. I mean, you're definitely doing this, great anthology thing with the Toilet Comics guys and the people, and they're all kind of hooked in already. Um, so the next question that Kurt likes to ask is, what do you think the future of comics could be, should be, will be? Just leave it to you, to respond.
Okay. Well, I'm really hopeful for the future of comics, especially seeing how many people are out there making them, be them people who I'm working with or not working with. It's so many people, so many artists out there, a lot of brilliant artists. What I'm most attracted to, though, is how much better, in my opinion, a lot of this underground work is than your
Yeah.
mainstream distribution. Like, I have high hopes for Marvel and DC comics to be good. I don't want to not enjoy those comics, but typically I don't. I will be open minded when I go to a comic shop. I'm like, oh, that looks cool. Flip through it. It's very brown and gray coloring, and I don't buy it. Um, but in general, I think that the underground scene or just independent comics in general could have a positive influence on comics as a greater, mainstream community. I see it. I see little hints of it here and there. Like, I think that once on Cartoonist Kayfabe, when Ed and Jim were talking about black and white comics so much, that's around when Marvel started doing black and white and blood, and DC would do their black and white comics.
Yeah,
They're
they were jealous.
yeah, they were jealous. They're like, oh, well, I think I know how to market to these hipsters who don't like us anymore. Yeah, I just want to see comics be better. I don't want to see so many boring comics that are just like a watered down version of the crappy movies that are based on the comics. It seems like this cycle of dullness happening in
I don't know
mainstream
about you
comics,
guys, but there isn't anything Thor could do that I'm interested in. I don't care if
right?
he butt humps a rhino. I wouldn't buy it. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really
And the
watered
same,
down. Like, in my opinion, when you have like so many people involved in making a product that has to make money, they have to make sure that the most people will enjoy it, and most people's taste is pretty bad. It's like it's just everything is watered
yeah, because
down.
it's a
Money
common
waters
denominator.
everything
Yeah,
down, and
right. It's a common denominator.
right,
I mean, you're better off finding like 100 or even 20, people that really appreciate your stuff without having to compromise it than you are, you know, printing up 1,000 copies and having them sit in your basement.
totally, yeah. Um, so yeah, for my hopes of the future in comics, I would like to see more creators doing their own thing uh, uh, on their own merits and putting it out into the world, despite whether or not someone's going to pick it up or publish it for them. And I'd like to see that snowball into just changing the face of comics as a whole. We had the underground comics movement of the 60s and 70s that had a huge positive influence on the comics throughout the 80s. And then maybe things got a little watered down until the 90s, and you got some cool underground and indie comics, you got fanographic stuff, some really great artists came out of that.
Yeah, we
But
were
then
right
it's
there
like
in the 90s.
it still cycles back to mundane crap. So I'd like to see it just stick this time. I'd like to see the variety and the excitement of comics and visual art form in general just really stick.
So
That's a lot of people. A lot of people. Jake, who was it that quoted Will Eisner and said that comics will always be here because it is an art form. It's used as this this merchandising. Let's print them out at 100,000 copies and get them in front of every kid, and this kind of it is that way. But the thing about this stack last night, I was listening to some podcasts, and I was like, and then I had these stacks here to go through, and read and everything. And there's such a like a journaling kind of feeling to it. There's such a personal expression, but there's still the want to make something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's not the opposite. It's not, I got to make something and boy, I hope I can express myself. It just always is in reverse for me in reading these. I think partially because there's such a very bravado basics, making marks, writing things in, and draw, like boom, got to get the pages down, boom, that type of thing. And I would, here's just going back to the process. Nathaniel, is there do you actually have like a little notebook where you thumbnail out, your comics, or are you just like, it's 4 pages, here are the pieces of paper, here's the markers, let's go?
It's kind of a little bit of both. I definitely
Okay.
do write scripts. I've got a
Okay.
spiral notebook that I write. Pretty much, I'll think about the story for a while before actually writing it, and then when I write it, it's mostly just the dialogue or the captions, very little description, and then I'll separate out X amount of lines to turn into a page. And I know, like, well, this is a panel, this is a panel. And then I'll say, well, how many panels is it? And then I do a little thumbnail of the panel layout in the margin. And then I'll draw that panel layout on a big piece of paper and then just start filling it in. Um, Personally, I find looking at a blank white sheet of paper incredibly scary.
Yeah.
And knowing that drawing comics can be rather difficult, uh, it it can create a stalemate situation. So what I'll do a lot of times is I'll draw in the panel borders. I might even add in the dialogue and then draw. So I've got a whole lot less scary white space to work with.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, so I know what's going to
I
happen
like
in the
that idea.
comic, so I just draw it.
Me too. Me too.
Thanks.
Yeah. So if people are catching this episode and you're seeing all these kind of varied styles, is your door open or your transom open for people to send something to you and maybe check
Yeah.
it out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The more the merrier. Yeah. I don't think I could cap off how many artists I would like to work with. If you're interested in working with JKPapers, if you're contributing to Soaked in Blood, yeah, message me on Instagram, nathaniel.j.k. And if I like what I see, then yeah, let's work together. I usually kind of do the opposite, and I'll find someone who I like, and then I'll offer
Reach
to
out
them.
proactively.
Yeah, yeah, definitely more proactive. I've never done like an open call or open submission kind of situation, but I'm not against it.
Well,
I
I'm
do want
talking
to
about
see
someone
everyone's
that,
art.
yeah, I'm talking about someone that sees this and they can see the kind of stuff that you do put out. Why don't tell us about the stuff that you wouldn't put out? Like, I'm sure you get stuff that you say thanks, but not right now. So, what kind of things shouldn't they be looking for?
Well, I haven't actually. I don't think I've ever said no to anyone, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I
It's-
I I want to encourage people to do the art that they want to make, and I want to encourage people to grow as artists. Sometimes I'll gravitate to an artist who might not think that they're up to snuff for a comic yet, but there's something in there that impresses me, and I'd like to see grow, and I want to give them the venue to do that. But what not to do? No sicko shit. It's violent. It's funny. There are certain violent things that can be portrayed as funny in a fictional setting, but there are certain things that shouldn't be joked about.
Just don't
And
Mike Diana
yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. As much as I can appreciate what Mike Diana does and
yeah.
did, uh, I'm not looking for that. I try to keep it like a hard R at JKPapers. Nothing too
Yeah,
racy. Nudity is okay for laughs, but
hard R though.
um, yeah, a hard R, sure. I mean, you can show disembowelment and stuff. You can
Right.
have like nudity and lots of cussing. Like that doesn't bother
I
me,
don't know.
but
I don't know if hard R today is the same thing as it was in 1972 when
that's a
Death
good
Wish
point.
came out. But yeah. So there's a little bit to interpretation. I mean, worst comes to
Mhm.
worst, you just take a big ink splat and go,
Yeah,
and let's cover up that little square inch right there, right?
right. Yeah, I'm not really into censorship, but there have been times where I say like, hey, that kind of comes off. It doesn't really that doesn't really sit right with me the way you said that or what you had that person say, or maybe you showed something a little too much. I'll suggest maybe like toning it down, but that's happened maybe like
Well, comics is a
twice.
place.
Yeah.
If you go to a good comic store like Forbidden Planet, comics is a place, in society where you do see, still everything and anything. It's
Mhm.
very open. You haven't had those censorship controversies for a long time that they used to have,
Mhm.
where retailers would get in trouble. I mean, I'm flipping through, in various comic stores where 1 minute you're just flipping through some indie comic, minding your business, and the next minute you're flipping through a comic and it's like, triple adult and everything right
Oh
next
yeah.
to each other, and you wonder if there's like if a kid wanders into the store, if there's any rhyme or reason to it. But I saw some incredible stuff, like incredibly off-putting, disturbing, whatever.
Mhm.
And my last trip down to Forbidden Planet, so it's all coming out. It's a good outlet. You just got to match the right audience to the right outlet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If that's what you want to do artistically, I'm not against it. If you submitted that to Soaked in Blood, I very likely wouldn't censor it. It's just a matter of matching my personal tastes. I'm putting out comics that I personally like, and comics that don't make me feel good aren't comics that I personally like. But I am very grateful that comics will allow that. Uh, in the wheelhouse. There should be no censorship of expression in comics or any artistic medium. But for JKPapers, I
Yeah, I
got
mean
my
you're gonna see it a lot in movies and TV and stuff, but comics and I guess books, it's still still open, not so bad as far as like the nanny state closing
yeah.
people down and stuff.
Nathaniel,
Yes.
Are you comfortable talking with the compensation if somebody was to contribute to Soaked in Blood per
Oh
se?
sure, yeah. I don't want to keep any of that secret or disappoint
Okay.
anyone if they do contribute. I've never paid for a piece of art that I've
Okay.
printed in Soaked in Blood. It's always been about community exposure. I know saying like, "Oh, I'll give you exposure for this art that you
Right.
did for free for me."
Right.
That's kind of shitty, but yeah, I do offer comp copies and discounted additional copies that you can then sell. So
Yeah.
you get a chunk
Yeah.
of comics, you double the price, sell them
Yep.
all at a con, then you got paid a little.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like I
if you're
like
looking
that.
for money, then it's not the right venue for you. But if you just
Right.
want to draw, then I'm all about it.
Yeah, I like the model where every contributor becomes a distributor,
Yeah.
right? Because then you cross pollinating, and everybody's helping each other if they have room on their table. But
Hmm.
some people have so much stuff they don't have room on their table. But but here, you might meet one guy, and then you hear about another guy that way, and that might be the person that you want to contact and reach out to. So you never know, and there's so many different styles here.
So now we've come to the real nerve wracking part of the episode. So this is the indie creator exchange. I always reach out to people and obviously want to send them a teaser. This is Jake and I's second teaser, which is the first 12 pages, and we look for at least one in return. But Nathaniel was just so gracious in sending pretty much a starter library, which has me very, very inspired. But we really want to get our guest, the creator, to give us just feedback, questions, whatever the form of it is, and take it from there.
Feel
So
yeah,
let
feel
us have
free
it, Nathaniel.
feel free to go off and be honest.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say is fine.
Oh man, Turbo Pit Fighter is awesome. It looks
Ah,
so good. I wouldn't know how to critique it in any way that is you'd find valuable. The artwork is beautiful. I love the pencil quality to it. That I think you were describing it's like a liquid graphite or a water soluble
yep, water
graphite that you
soluble.
use.
Yep,
So it's kind of got a painterly look to it, but
yep,
like a pencil finish, which I really like.
yep,
I've always appreciated that about like especially like amateur or teenage art or child
yep.
art where you don't even think to put ink on top of your pencils. You're just
Mm-hmm.
drawing as well as you can. I love that. And what I especially love about that is that I feel like in comics, so many people are putting their all into the inking process, and so they don't necessarily even have to draw all that tight in the pencil stage. They're like, this is just going to be erased anyway. I do all of my drawing in the inking stage, and like,
Yeah.
I can appreciate that, but it just brings me back to that feeling of seeing a really, really well rendered pencil drawing. Like you'd see those like extremely talented kids in class who, draw this like skull with all the shading or something. And
Yeah.
it's very inspiring. I don't necessarily need to see this artwork inked. I think that you've brought it back to this kind of this visceral, original thing that people are drawn to when they get into drawing, or the first time they see a good drawing. Once you get ink on it, people start asking questions like, "Oh, you did this by hand?" And like, because they don't really get it. But all that said, certainly not an amateur looking comic. You guys can draw. This looks great. Yeah, I love all the angles, the close-ups, the backgrounds. You've got a lot of detail. You guys got guts. It looks good.
Yeah, so I was wondering if you ever, because you're mentioning that pencil-y quality, even though it is ink. I would say, maybe what we should label Kurt as is like inks and tones, right? Because
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really not just black ink, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I was wondering if you ever got into the Marvel magazines that were black and white, and they had this kind of pencilish feeling to them.
Oh,
And
right. Yeah.
I'm thinking of like Planet of the Apes and
Yeah.
Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, and it seems like they did skip. I don't know how it all comes together actually, because you could take pencils and just like darken them in Photoshop or whatever, but
Sure.
in those days, they would have had to do something with double exposures, or maybe they take a version of the pencils, they turn it to black, and then they superimpose that on the light. I don't know. I mean, I would love to know more about
Mhm.
how they did it, but it basically just came out looking like tighter than pencil pages, but also really, really pencily.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it looks like it almost looks like it could have been watercolored and then just printed in black and white. I'm sure that to achieve those gray tones, they had to go through some kind of process to half tone it, because it's still printed in
Right.
black and white. Like you
Yeah.
can print gray in color and then it comes out like that weird purple or green or something. But
Right.
back then it was like straight up black and white. So
Yeah, I think
um,
some of the Filipino artists might have been just using washes and stuff,
mhm.
and then they're just submitting this original, and then Marvel is basically just copy. But it might have still had pencil in it, and it might have had,
Yeah.
maybe some of it was ink. I don't know. It's so weird how it all came together. But I just remember thinking, this is something different from the regular comics, with
Yeah.
the
And
CMYK.
I think that's kind of like what they were going for too. They're like, oh, this doesn't look like something that could be in an Amazing Spider-Man, but they were certainly not going for that either. They kind of
Yeah.
like wanted to have a differentiation between like the Conan comics or that Hulk
Yeah.
special or whatever.
Yep. The Conan
Yeah,
ones. Yep.
they would. Some of the later ones, like there's a Spider-Man one where it looks like it's all colored in colored pencil. They definitely wouldn't have let that fly, like in their
Yeah.
flagship line. But I think I really appreciate the look of that stuff. Pretty much anything that deviates from the house style and the corporate comics look, I'm
And it also
interested
wasn't
in.
comics code too, so they would get a little more racy sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely kind of like comics for young adults, I think, like college kids back then probably, and you know, um, I don't know. Like I imagine like so many uncles and stepdads, and with their Trans Ams and motorcycles and nudie mags. They also have those are the dudes who have like that Hulk giant size thing, or
Right,
a stack of Savage swords.
Yeah.
right. And there was something different about distribution too. So I'm sure it carries on. And the financial considerations really, just dictate so much that we don't realize. We think, oh, these guys are sitting down and they have a bunch of writers there. Like, no, they had Martin Goodman, and somebody was like pitching him on, sword and sorcery, TNA, Robert E. Howard, 18 pages, black and white, and then he would either greenlight it or not. And it was all based on, you know, how many copies are we going to eat, and are we going to be developing an audience for this? How long can it go? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that they were definitely trying different avenues for making money. Like I think that they knew that they could sell something for like $3 or $5, magazine size, black and white, multiple pages in a bookstore, better than they could sell like 50 cent, 60 cent comics to children with limited money.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely like a
Yeah. You
a
might get
marketing.
some newsstands. You might get into some stationery stores that you wouldn't get, candy stores,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. As opposed to the spinner racks and the comics, and everyone's expecting it to be wholesome with the comics code stamp and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of great stories, coming out of those, Marvel magazines. I mean, to me, it's just amazing how expensive they are now. If you want to get an old Planet of the Apes, or a Savage Sword, the Deadly Hand, all that kind of stuff, you might be paying $30, for just like a reader copy.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I remember I guess it was around like probably 2001. I got a stack of Savage Sword of Conan's from just like an antique store slash bookstore in Galveston, Texas, and there were no
Hmm.
proper comic book stores. So when I saw a comic of any type at that place, I jumped on it, and I think they probably cost me about a buck to $3 each or something back
Score.
then. Yeah,
Nice.
totally. I don't have them anymore.
I'll double you up.
God,
I'll double your money
yeah.
right now.
Oh man, if I
I'll double.
they'd be in tatters if I even still had them. But
Right.
Oh my.
yeah,
Well,
young
yeah.
adult
So
life.
real interesting, because it's all about like versions, right? They have all these characters, but we can, if somebody says something and it won't fly, in the regular House of Marvel, then they'll say, well, I'll do that in the black and white. And you did see, you saw Star Lord, and you saw Howard the Duck, and you saw there's a lot of black and whites that people forget, that
Hmm.
came out. And it was just kind of them saying, like, this is our kind of like sandbox, right? Let's say,
Right.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So those are
All
all great.
right. So Nathaniel, can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us in the Indie Creator Exchange. And as we say, this is not the last time. It is the first time we're going to sit down with you, because really for Jake and I, it's keeping up to date with people, because things do change out there, and
Hmm.
whatever kind of exchange and information or ideas and stuff, and even the collaboration, if you will, on some kind of levels and everything. We just did our live recording of Making Turbo, and we had Alex Turbin on there, and we've been
Sweet.
discussing a collaboration in some form,
Cool. Cool.
anthology wise, as well as the teaser for Turbo. Went back and forth, and I kept interjecting like, well, we could save that question for Nathaniel, because we're interviewing him in about 15 minutes, so on and so forth.
Cool.
A great resource. What you're doing is fantastic, and yeah, wish you the best. And we also want to let you, make any statement on how people can get a hold of you, what the spiel is, and then we'll let you go.
All right. Well, man, thank you so much. You guys are really awesome for having me on. Happy to be here and talk about comics with y'all. Yeah, let's do it again. Absolutely. Thanks for
Cool.
spreading the word, giving me this opportunity. Anyone out there who likes what you're seeing on the screen, you want to get your own Max Murder Killing Sprees and Soaked in Blood comics, you can go to JKPapers with a Z dot bigcartel.com. That's my online shop. You want to hit me up in person? Well, in person. Hit me up on Instagram at nathaniel.j.k. Follow me there. That's my comics Instagram. I share any info about the new stuff that's coming out there. You can DM me. You can send me images of your art if you're interested in contributing. I just want to spread the word. I want to grow the community. The bullpen at JKPapers is expanding rapidly all the time. Next year is going to have a bunch of new stuff, cool new stuff. So there's room for you. If you're out there wanting to join us, do it.
Cool.
Sounds like fun, man. Kurt, wouldn't you love to just spend a half an hour doing one of these pinups?
I will.
Man, go for it. Yeah. Beautiful art, man.
I have a couple ideas in the can. I just gotta make the time.
Yeah. You read the books. You know what's going on. You know all the characters. It's 19xx is a shared universe under the JKPapers publishing imprint. I made it up, but everybody's creations are their creations. I won't use your characters without your permission. You can use my characters just fine. You want to use someone else's characters, just talk to them. We're all cool. We'll probably just say yes anyway.
Right.
Yeah, do your thing. Only you
That's a
can be
great
yourself.
model. It's
You
a great
can be
model,
yourself.
guys. They have open doors. Maybe some of you listeners out there can find a home if you're a creator, and if you're a collector or an aficionado, get your hands on some of these copies, and your eyes will pop open.
Yeah, scoop them up. Thanks a lot, guys.
All
right. Hold tight. All
right.
Nathaniel. Jake, you want to close us out?
Yes, folks. If you like what you're hearing, check out our other episodes, and then don't forget to check our other series. We have the Making of Turbo Pit Fighter, where we draw in ink live on the air and chit chat, and then we have our other series, which is Comics That Influence, where we do flip throughs of incredible comics. And Kurt, I gotta do this on one of my next flip throughs. Boom!
All right.
But we'll see you guys on our YouTube. That's our main landing page. Check us out there, or get us on the socials. Don't forget the new Doom Mag's Twitter and kurtbrugel.com.
Awesome. See you next Sunday, Jake.
Peace.